that should have fixed it.
Good car. It was beige, and it was rusty. It was not good. Uh, well, the worst part of it was the a lot of the switches, the switches and the switch gear that you can find in new cars now are just like they're pretty awesome, right? It's like high quality. But with the Ford, hold on one second, with the Ford Tempo, for example, the headlight switch, it was this pull knob, right? And then you pulled it to turn on the headlights. But the problem was there was some sort of a heat source, or it was probably near the firewall or something like that. But that switch basically melted, so that when you pulled it and it was hot or something like that, you basically broke the switch, and you have the headlight on all the time. So the only way you could turn off the headlight is if you just disconnected the battery. So anytime you wanted to shut the car off, you disconnect the battery.
That's.
But anyway, that's
I mean, I guess it's a safety feature, maybe.
I guess so. Yeah,
I mean, you
it's
have to
like
reconnect it to turn it back on. So I mean, not
yeah,
many
yeah.
car thieves are going to
You
think of
just
that.
memorize that radio station by heart. Yeah,
We got
yeah.
Reese with a 2011 Ford Ranger 5-speed. Ironically enough, a much older Ranger, I think in 99 or 2000, actually, might have been a 96, almost was my first car. It ended up with a Focus.
Hmm.
Apparently, Ford's is everybody's first car because I got Lara here saying a show as her first car. Now,
SHO. Yeah,
was that the Jelly Bean
it's
or
the
the one that looked
SHO.
the same going forwards and or in reverse? Because the first show with the Shogun engine was that engine was nuts, man, and it was better than a
Yeah.
Ferrari Mondial on a skid pad, if you can believe that
Hmm.
or not.
That's that's crazy. But yeah, that was kind of like an unreal car, right? It's like you've got like this. Was it a was it a twin turbo, or no? Was it just like a V6? I can't
So
recall.
Ford came out with a 3-liter V6 that was a pushrod V6 that was apparently all new at the time. Even in the late 80s, that was still ancient technology. And they sent the motors off to Yamaha, who did the heads,
Hmm.
and then they did the spaghetti. If you ever look at the Shogun intake manifold, it's insane. It's actually got 12 intake runners for a V6. So long runners were there at low RPM for torque, and then the short runners were there for high RPM
Okay.
horsepower. It made like 220, 230 horsepower. It could rev
Which is insane back in like the 90s. It's
right, and in a Taurus, like you look at a Taurus and you're
yeah,
not thinking that kind of motor. It was gnarly. Apparently, it could rev higher than that, but it really didn't need to because it was well past its efficiency at that point as far as making power.
yeah,
It was crazy, but it just looked like every other Taurus, and that's why nobody bought it. I mean, it had a 5-speed manual. The first gens did. They put an automatic in later because people like automatics. You know, Greg, who's unfortunately not with
sure.
us, has one. Not making fun or kicking a man while he's not feeling well, but know these facts. But it was yeah, I was just watching. Haggerty did a really cool video on the show. Jason Camisa
Hmm.
did one, and it's you wouldn't
That's
think
right. I do remember that one.
it's a hell of a car, a really cool car. And as a first car, it's
Uh,
a bit of a sleeper. And then we got
yeah.
Dave here, who just 69
I
AMC.
think he's the winner right now.
Oh, he's way the winner. I mean, that certainly beats
I
a
mean,
tempo, or would you have a tempo?
definitely beats my tempo. Yeah.
Beats my Focus.
Um,
I
I
think,
think definitely the coolest looking so far because the SHO, I mean, it looked like a Taurus,
yeah,
except for that the SHO impression on the rear bumper, which is really cool. But yeah, the Javelin, I think is that's going to take the cake right now.
yeah, with a 343. I mean, we're talking small block
Yeah.
V8. That's that's a hell of a first car. Question, Dave. Did you get that at 17, 18, or was that a little bit down the road? And did it survive? Because teenagers with that type of car, that's a lot of car for,
Yeah.
for that. There's a reason my dad only said I could have 140 horsepower with my first ride, and he knew.
That's a pretty safe. Yeah, not in hindsight, it was a pretty good idea that I had that Ford Tempo. It was we couldn't go into speeds where we could kill ourselves. So
Yeah.
but,
Oh man. So we ask about first cars. Well, I guess I should say my first ever car was a Ford Focus, 2000.
another Ford. All right.
Yeah, uh, all American cars, believe it or not. Kind of surprising, but my
Hmm.
Ford Focus, right at the point I was trying to. Oh, that's terrible, Dave's 17 and stolen and ouch. Yeah, my Focus met an unfortunate end, but it was 100% my fault. Uh, Missed the deer, hit the guardrail, hit the embankment. Bad. But at any rate, I actually have a YouTube video. We'll have to talk about that one at some point down the road. And then my first car on
Cool.
shifting lanes was a M3.
That's quite a jump.
Well,
And we've
well,
got
shifted. Well, in between was my IS 300, but shifting lanes
right.
that didn't show up on shifting lanes until
Okay,
after.
that's right. My first shifting lanes car was the 2013 Subaru BRZ, and I think we'll talk a little bit more later. But that was a really good car. I had a really fun time driving that thing. It taught me so much about like car control, and it didn't have a lot of power, but man, it handled really well. I love those twin cars, and then the new one is like even better. But yeah, the 2013 Subaru BRZ, man, that was such a good car.
Yeah, I
Not
mean,
my favorite car, my not my most favorite car. My most favorite car is the uh, 2006 Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution 9. So like once I got my first job, I figured out that as long as I had enough money to put a roof over my head, to pay food, the rest could be saved for car payments. So that was my first big splurge.
that's
But man, it's totally worth it.
what a car to have and not be doing shifting lanes at that time, man.
I know exactly. And I just love that car so much. And I didn't know how to drive a manual at that age. So this was like around 2006, right? Just got my first job. And around that time, big fight between the Evos and the STIs. You're always either on the Evo crowd or the STI crowd. And I just Like I just remember watching Top Gear, and Jeremy Clarkson was comparing the Evo 8 to the Subaru STI, and it was like, man, that Evo looks really good. So all for Team Evo, and but yeah, they only sold it in manual transmission. So I was like, I don't know how to drive a manual car. So I just decided to just go to the dealership and just buy it outright. And like I put my money down, and then was going to pick it up the next week, and just all day, every day, I was like watching YouTube when this is when YouTube was like still very early on, but a lot of people were like, they had videos of like how to shift in a manual transmission. So I was just like watching that nonstop. And then when I picked it up from the dealership, I was like, I did not know how to drive this thing, man. I didn't have the muscle memory at all. But I remember just like stalling, must have been like about 30 times between the dealership and my apartment. It was really scary, but after that, man, it was worth it.
Absolutely. That's one hell of a car to learn manual on. I'm not gonna lie. Not
It's so
forgiving.
hard. It's like it's all-wheel drive, and like the clutch was kind of heavy, and the engagement point was not really forgiving. You had like that very small window in which it engages. So it was like trial by fire almost for like learning how to drive a manual transmission car. But once you get good at that, you could pretty much drive
Oh,
everything.
it's all, yeah. Like, so many of my friends learned on a old 4 liter Wrangler, and you almost don't need a right foot to drive that manual. So they'd get into my car even with 140 horsepower, but no torque, and they'd be like, "I don't know
Yeah.
what I'm doing." Like, I remember I had a buddy I was teaching to drive stick, and he had been training for like 2 3 days, and he was good. He had it down pat. So we went out and decided to go to Applebee's or something to celebrate. He got at the traffic light, stalled it, tried it again,
Yeah.
stalled it again, tried it a third time, stalled, decided, you know what, to heck with this, got out of the car and started walking to Applebee's. Meanwhile, I'm in the back seat because I guess we had a friend in the driver's seat, so I had to get out the car in traffic to get to the driver's seat so I could drive it away.
Oh
But
my
man,
God.
Reese's first car also met an unfortunate end. 30,000 kilometers and 420 Newton meters, going all metric in the stream tonight. And it got rear-ended. So we had a stolen and
Oh
set on
man.
fire, rear-ended. I ruined mine. Did your tempo meet an unfortunate end, or was it just one of those I need to get rid of?
No, we got rid of it, but I do remember I was driving with my dad, and we were getting off a highway. It was just like one of those roundabouts, right? And then we got on a local road. But as soon as we got on the local road, like I heard like this loud scraping, and then all of a sudden the scraping stopped, and all you hear is like just exhaust sound. I mean, this Ford Tempo became like a race car, as loud as a race car. And I quickly looked in the rearview mirror, and you see this muffler just like tumbling down the road. It has completely separated from the car, and yeah, that was the last memory I have of that car. I think we got rid of it and got something more sensible. I think it was we got a 1999 Honda Accord after that. So,
That's
uh,
incredibly sad.
which was not that great either, actually.
Did
Like
it?
you hear all these great things about like Hondas in the 90s, but that 1999 Honda Accord had like lots of transmission problems and everything. And but anyway,
But at least
that
your
was
tempo, it was a little bit of a foreshadowing to your really your most recent car and just being loud. It factory self muffler deleted. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, at least you could turn that off.
yeah. So
I guess we'll talk more about that car later.
so while we're on the topic of first cars and everything like that, and the whole reason this kind of conversation got going was I figured it would be really cool today because shifting lanes, believe it or not, it's been around for a while. It doesn't feel like it. It feels,
Yeah.
like pretty much yesterday we were just, let's start a website. Let's see about this whole YouTube thing. Let's do this. And
Hmm.
now all of a sudden, I have two cars. You have a car. Greg's got two.
How many cars does he have now?
Well, as far as the channel is concerned, it's the Polestar and the 240. but
240.
you know, he's gone through more
Right.
cars than we have, and that's saying a lot.
Yeah,
Because
he's cycled through a lot of them.
I
Yeah.
get bored very easily, but God bless
Oh,
him. So, but I figured
yeah.
it'd be cool to go down take a trip down memory lane and look at our first ever project car YouTube video, or any project car video for that matter, and just take a look, figure out the car, because this car will make an appearance later, but I just figure we'll take a look at it. And we start with the first frame. And Greg, we miss you, buddy. We'll see you next
Oh.
week. But that is a very unflattering first frame of the video. But
Is there any frame that's flattering? I mean, oh, he's not here to defend himself.
yeah, but I mean, at least he has hair. I mean, that's how long ago this was.
Ooh, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Wow, time flies.
yeah. Imagine
And
that.
so does hair, apparently.
Yeah. Got to get them keeps up. But so
There you go.
let's give it a start.
What's
Yeah,
up, guys?
yeah.
Thanks for tuning in. My name is Gregson, and welcome to Shift.
Are we gonna get
Lane.
audio on this?
I'm
or-
very excited to tell you that we are finally.
That's you should be getting it through. Oh, that's why. Actually, don't know how to get.
Well, let's just play and yeah. Let's keep on going and then just we'll
Modify my 2014.
because we're gonna see the car very shortly. He's somewhere in New Jersey right now in like some random ass park.
And tell you what
People just looking
And
at it.
everyone's like, what is he doing? And I think he started off wanting to say about
yes, everyone.
tuning up his Subaru WRX,
We
which
have
was
chosen our first
a
project.
really cool car.
And what a project car it
And
is.
but no, he ended up getting this one. I think he got it for like
2004
like
Volvo
I want to
V7.
say
Now the nice thing about this is
$4,000.
that
Was
it
it?
is an R.
I think it
Which
was
in
900.
Volvos
30,
It was less than
39
fine.
so
It was less than
usually
4 grand.
known as R design or
which
R.
to think
back
about it in today's terms is kind of crazy because I mean this car is just
More
I don't know,
performance,
somewhere around like 10K now for like a working example.
I mean, it's another example of just how crazy the market's going, and how enthusiasts are starting to discover these cars and the kind of platform it is and things like that. But everything's skyrocketing. I've heard some people blame us for the reason why Volvos are so much more expensive now. Sorry.
Yeah.
You know, we
But these things are going crazy on my Bring It trailer, and of course you have to get good examples, of course. But this was a fantastic car. This one was an automatic, and I don't remember how many miles it had, but I do remember driving it around, and I think the brakes was like one of the first things that we changed. I think the pads were like toast.
Yeah, you and I did the brakes in my shop at work. This was an automatic. It was actually, apart from the front bumper, much better than the manual we ended up getting to replace this. It was, I mean, I can't, we were talking about manual swapping this thing at one point. But here's the crazy thing about this video. If you play this video and then go to the Polestar video, it's almost the same type of thing. It just goes to show you that if it ain't broke at first, this is one of our most viewed videos. It has over 340,000 videos on it, which doesn't sound like a lot to some, but to us, that's huge. And we saw that, and we're like, well, we all got to buy Volvos, and all of which we'll touch on a little bit later. But this is
and when we got this, we were like, hey, we wanted to find a really cool car that is like 300 horsepower, and for some odd reason we just like wagons, and Greg loves wagons, and we were like, yeah, this is an awesome car. And lo and behold, like, we didn't realize that there was such a strong community behind the Volvo brand, and this car especially, just because of how unique this thing was. When it first came out, it's like Volvo is known for these really safe cars, boring commuter cars, and then one day they just came out with the R version, and they stuffed a really powerful motor in there. and the rest is history.
Yeah, it's nuts because like, and the craziest thing about it is that like, as everybody knows, these motors, they were strong, 300 plus horsepower, 300 torque, you know, downpipe tune, you're nudging 350, 400 pretty easily and stuff. And the noise from the gods. Like I talked about this on stream with chat last night. Apart from Porsche, I can't think of anything that's a sub V8 up that isn't a straight six that sounds better. Like, the Porsche,
That isn't a straight six. Okay, yeah, I was
like,
gonna say like there's a bunch of straight sixes that sound really good, but
like
yeah, I hear you.
it's it sounds better than a K motor from a Honda. It
Yeah.
sounds better than any
Oh
other
yeah, yeah.
any boxer engine from Subaru by a significant margin. It just the note these things have is just incredible, and it was one of the biggest disappointments I had with the C30. I was like, ooh, 2.5 liter 5-cylinder. This one I didn't know anything or know any better. 2.5 liter. Oh, it's gonna sound like Greg's car. This is gonna be epic. I can't wait. And then it didn't, and I was like, wait a minute. So they had at some point two different 5-cylinders. But it's just this thing. Yep. And there's Greg's baby. He went back to that. God bless him. Too many S60Rs, Rick. They're selling pretty good right now.
Yeah, it's incredible. I had a Volvo S60R, and that was the reason for that has got a lot to do with the fact that we had a V70R, and there was a lot of interest in the wagon, and we were like, hey, there's this other thing, the S60R, which is basically the sedan version of it. And at the time I was autocrossing a lot, and I was like, let's make this into an autocross car, and let's see how we could go. And,
yeah, I think
it was not a great autocross car.
Yeah, I mentioned that. That you wanted to autocross it, which was an amazing idea, but because all-wheel drive and the displacement and the turbo, I think you were punching in the same classes like Caymans and Boxsters and things like that.
Yeah. It was a tough class. The fact that it was making like 300 horsepower and it had all-wheel drive, it was, putting it in the class with like Subaru STIs, Evos, and like I think 350Zs was in the same class. And I'm like, holy crap, this is. And with autocross, it's like the more modifications you put into it to try and beat those cars, well, those modifications are also going to put you in a different class, and it's most likely going to be a tougher class. So you're like, picking the right car is like almost like the first important step. And like the Volvo S60R was not the right car.
Well, the funny thing about that is it's a lot like I don't know how much of Gran Turismo 6 you played, but
not very much.
If you raced online, that you could set it by performance points. So like they rated power, suspension mods, all this stuff, and they put a performance point number on it, right? And you could not exceed it. But it was the same basic concept. If you started with the wrong car, you could get to that, but you'd be dusted by these other cars that were better for that 550 point class, so to speak. So it's kind of interesting. I don't know if that's how they assess the class, if they have a behind the scenes point system or something like that, but it's kind of cool to see that like real world versus the digital world kind of having a similar kind of ways about going about things, and
similar system. And it's really how they determine that, I think, is like by trial. It's like from year to year looking at the data, because you won't really know like the first year like what's really the best car. You kind of get that data after the first year, like that new car has come out. So but in terms of like making modifications, it's like you have your street class, and you have, and I might be butchering it right now, but you have like your prep class, and you have like your bolt-on class. So like exhaust, intake, and headers. That puts you in a certain like bolt-on class. Once you start tuning your car, that puts you like almost all the way to the top to the most extreme class. So that just like shows you that, if you want to tune your car, you better have spent a lot of other money on the car, because that also opens you up to like aero modifications and all those things. So yeah, autocross, there's a really cool community behind that. There's a lot of there's just like so many other possibilities, and like so many different ways that you could go into that. That's another rabbit hole, basically. But yeah, love that community. And when I showed up with the S6TR, they were like, um, "You brought the wrong car, man." So
Yeah.
I
Oh,
was the only S6TR there.
looks like Greg put sunglasses on for the outro on this one. But here's the thing with this car. I think we actually did put an exhaust on it until it got transitioned to the manual car. But this was it. This was Genesis, and it's crazy I never thought as a kid growing up that Volvo would be the way to make car content. Like I never in a million years, Volvo wasn't even on my radar, and lo and behold, this car launched us. Like it was a
Yeah.
$3,900 car that was a godsend to us. Like
I mean,
I would have never gotten the
yeah,
C30. I would have never met all that stuff and things I'll touch on. But like this
yeah.
is a just an amazing. It's amazing how life works out. Like never thought I'd be on camera, YouTuber, live streaming,
Mm-hmm.
talking with people like Rick who has 4 S60Rs from '04.
That's too many S60Rs.
My man's hoarding over there. If you need one, I
Yeah.
guess reach out to Rick because he has what appears to be a surplus, unless he's just using 4 to make one. I don't know. Um, but it's crazy to think Volvo, man. Like no shot. Never really thought of Volvo. Like it's crazy because growing up, this corner of the street I grew up on was a Volvo mechanic, and I was like, oh, those are some cars, I guess, and things, but it's crazy to think about this, man. Like the way life works just brings you down,
Hmm.
brings you to different spots.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, I mean, I see a lot of familiar names. I don't think we ever would have known these names without Volvo. But speaking of Volvo, where we're going next is, again, if you were on the stream last night, you will invariably know that I did a tier list. And apparently, if you are a streamer, this is part of your getting your streamer badge, is you have to do tier lists. But it's fun. It's interesting. Makes you think, do all this other sort of stuff. And so I came up with it, and I figured the most fun thing to do would be to show Hanson
Mm.
and let you tell me how much I'm wrong.
Okay, so all right. Obviously, I had no say in this
And I prefaced that with
because you
everyone.
did
I told
this.
them it was all me.
Yeah,
No, you guys had no
yeah.
input because I wanted you guys to react to what I
I
thought. And I'll try
I
to give
could
you some
tell you did
explanations here and
this.
there. Um,
Okay,
where
so I could tell you did this because this is all wrong.
fair.
So we'll start at the bottom first, because I think this is where you and I kind of agree here. The 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 E46 M3. I mean, that's like the best car ever made. But we just happened to run across the worst version of that best car ever made. But yeah, I remember picking that car up for you. I flew by myself all the way down to Varsh's house and down there, and you know went. We put it up on his lift, looked at the underneath of that car, and it was in really good shape. I mean, that was a Florida car. There's like absolutely no rust. The rear subframe, which is what these cars are like known for, like they normally just deteriorate, and it was in fairly good shape. Um, but the interior, clearly, it was a Florida car, because it was just like it looked like some animal was just like let loose in the car, and it was just like all torn to shreds. And so yeah, the E46 M3, uh, that was not um, that was not a good car.
No, I mean
uh,
it was just it just had like you guys Tavares had said, oh yeah, race the rear main seal, that'll take care of the oil leak. Turns out he was on the exact wrong side of the engine. It was the Vanos that was leaking, and by the time I had put in, gosh, it had to be close to like $5,000 at the 6 grand at this point into it to figure that out. The
yeah,
brake caliper seized on the. It was like, I'm out. I just,
yeah,
this is
that
too
was
much. Um,
insult to injury.
and I was,
That's yeah.
I had a
It's
whole
like that's
interior
the
too
beginning.
before that brake caliper. I had a whole Imola red interior ready to go into it, and that caliper
Mhm.
seized. You just got to fold them when you know, and I'm like, forget this,
Yeah.
man. Like, I'm out.
And it's like, all the older BMWs are like great, like you could like it's easier to maintain. But yeah, once you got into like the E46, it was like here's where all those like electrical gremlins start to come in, like the timing and stuff like the Vanos. It just like overcomplicates things. But the vehicle dynamics though,
Oh,
it is one of
when
the
it
best
worked,
cars
it was
ever made.
the best car, bar none, to drive.
Yeah,
It just the problem
yeah.
was I think I had it running well and as it should and as best as it possibly could at that mileage for roughly 2.5 hours in 8 months of owning the thing. So it's like,
It just made that 2.5 hours so much sweeter,
oh, it
though,
was
right?
the angels were singing. It was sunny. It was just something out of a movie. And then the third act happened, and apparently this was where the bad guys win. So
Yeah,
it's something I've
but
been
yeah, yeah.
trying to replicate. Like I want to find a build where I can replicate the feel of that car, not being that car, because I'm scarred for life for BMWs because of that car.
I mean, now I'm like I'm getting like cringe thinking of the time when I flew all the way down and then driving like 1,100, 1,300 miles back on my own, and thinking back to that, I might have been stranded, and I might be in like North Carolina somewhere still now. I don't
Yeah,
know,
I mean
but yeah,
that's live and learn, but hey, that's what makes life worth living, I guess. It
exactly.
wasn't as fun as the
Um,
Aston drive back.
no, 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 it was not. It was not. The next car that you have right there, the Volvo S60R. You know, yes, that was probably one of the worst purchases because, first of all, I got it for around $3,500, so it was like cheaper than Greg's first B70R, and really cheap compared to today's money. But that car had a lowering springs. Actually, it was it had lowering springs in the front and stock springs in the back, so it was just like riding like this.
Massive.
It was more aerodynamic, I
Didn't you
guess.
watch F1 last year? The more rake you have, the better downforce you
The
get.
better.
With the
Yeah,
diffuser and everything.
yeah.
The
And
C30 is
actually, you know
suffering
what?
from that right now, to be brutally honest. I have to level out the ride
Oh
height.
no. But the fact that I had lowering springs on there, that actually put me in a different class in autocross as well. So
So 50%
it
lowering
was,
springs puts you in a different class.
yeah, exactly. So because it changed all the suspension geometry, and like already that's a different class. But I do remember that car, uh, you know, breaking down at some point, stranded me, and the problem was the fuel pump. The fuel pump module basically crapped out,
That's when you had a habit
and
of getting stranded on the side of the road with cars you had purchased.
yeah. Yes, so this was not the first car I purchased that stranded me. It was the second car, but yeah, the fuel pump ECU crapped out, and um, this is one of my favorite things about Volvo is like the community. They are so strong, they're so tight. I basically shared my problem on the Facebook page, on the Facebook groups, and within like I'd say an hour, someone said, "Hey, I've got this part for you. Let's meet up, and then I can help you out." And basically, uh, got the part, was able to install it like the next weekend, and got it working. And yeah, it was nuts. It was awesome. Like
Yeah,
these are
that's
like very old cars, and yet there's still a community that kind of like maintains them and has the spare parts to help you out. So that was really
that's
cool.
without question something I cannot say enough is the community.
Yeah.
Like people volunteering to drive the C30 back from Michigan for me. Uh, Rich Forsyth, who is just, I don't know how he remembers anything other than it because he's a walking Volvo encyclopedia. I think Rick and your boy drove my C30 back. Actually, now I'm looking at the name, remembering that and stuff. It's just an
Yeah.
amazing group, by far and away the best community I have ever been a part of, automotively speaking. Way better than BMW,
Hmm.
Lexus, Mustang crowd. Like just except for a couple, it's just a
Yeah.
great group of people.
Now, next on that list, I would say the BMW M3 should go down as one of the worst purchases
So you think it should be here?
because I think it should be right there because I don't think Greg really had that much time to enjoy it just because there were so much like titling issues
Oh yeah.
that just like robbed all the fun out of like being able to enjoy the car on like on the roads legally. So I mean, it was making a ton of power, but yeah, like all those titling nightmares just made it kind of a nightmare to own. But I'm sure if he were here, he'd probably defend that. That's probably going to go up in the maybe in the great section. I'm not sure. But the Subaru BRZ, now that is I think that deserves to be higher. I'd put that in the great, in one of the greatest purchases.
The
So
top
it
or the
started off
or
being, oh no, right there. Well, you
right
got
it
it right
okay.
there. Yeah, that's good. Hmm. Now, it started off as being one of the worst purchases ever. This was my first shifting lanes project car. This is when we were, well, we're still doing project cars, but uh, this was my project car, and my whole goal was, this is when I was getting into autocross, and at this time I was like, what were people driving? Like BRZs, 86s, they were driving that. So I was like, all right, done. So I tried to find like the cheapest BRZ I could find, and that one, this was it. I think it was $12,000 at the time. It had like 99,000 miles, single owner. So I was like, can't go wrong, right? I mean, like this guy must have worked for him for like the first 99,000
Oh.
miles. So
Well, it worked for
went ahead and picked it up.
99,000. I think 40 miles for you.
Well, no, I see. I had to drive it back, so I had to at least drive it like about 150 miles.
Okay.
But anyway, uh, bought it. 6 days later, it broke down on me, and it wasn't like a relatively minor to medium issue like the Volvo S60R, where the fuel pump module failed. This was something more catastrophic. Now, this was before the huge valve spring recall with Subaru was issued. And I have a feeling that maybe I got something to do with that recall. Not really sure. But I will say that when it broke down, I called the dealership and they were like, um, we're going to try and make this right. We'll send you a tow truck. Now, mind you, this dealership is in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. I live in North Jersey, and it's like 2 hours away. This dealership was like, we're going to go send a tow truck up there, and we're going to grab the car back. So they grabbed the car, and this back and forth between me and the dealership was well over 40 days. I mean, this was very long. I just bought the car and was not able to drive it. But long story short, uh, the valve springs. broke, and it disintegrated, and it just like when it disintegrated, like other parts basically broke, and like all that debris, all that metallic debris, just got sucked up and like cycled through the engine. So they basically just had to tear everything apart, gave me a brand new engine, and it was all covered.
That's awesome.
And I mean, like that, I just completely lucked out there because here I bought like a 99,000 mile Subaru, and then the dealership just gave me a brand new engine. But not long after that, um, Subaru and Toyota issued this valve recall, and then because they were finding that the valve springs would disintegrate and could seize your engine, and that's exactly what happened here.
So you
So
changed the world. You helped the world. Hanson, hero.
not all heroes wear capes, so
Some end up
they
on the side
have
of
to
the road.
wear Subaru BRZs or drive Subaru BRZs.
So
But after that happened, I was able to, it was basically like a brand new car. Started autocrossing with it, and it was such a great car to learn car control. I mean, it's like pure driver's car, rear wheel drive, very simple. Not a lot of power, but
torque
it's
trough.
like you could. What's that?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I just have torque trough. Dip.
Yeah, torque dip. Yeah, the torque dip was not good. But it's like it's a lot more fun to drive a slow car fast than
You can
drive a
address
fast
the
car slow.
limits and everything like that. Yeah. I mean,
Exactly.
let's not
Yeah,
forget when the motor was out, you had thoughts of an LS. Just saying.
I did.
Just
I
saying.
did. But then I was like, you know, I mean, that's not cheap. You know, that's a lot of money, and also uh, potentially a lot of problems as well
Yeah.
because like
Well, I
I
don't
mean
know if
you're
those
just
cars.
that's just another yeah.
I don't know if those cars is the ECU and the body loom integrated, or are they separate systems? That's
Oh,
usually where the
I don't
issues
know.
pop up. You put the aftermarket ECU
Yeah,
in, and it's not talking, so now you're Christmas
yeah,
treeing and all this other stuff. But I
exactly.
mean, everyone I know who's owned one of these, as a journalist who's reviewed one of these, has basically said if you're looking to drive a high performance car down the road, you need to learn how to drive a BRZ, GR86, GT86, FRS, all the 9 million names Toyota gave it to it. By learning to
Yeah, the
control this
twins.
thing, yeah, the twins. By
Yeah,
learning car control in this, it'll make you that much better with something with a heck of a lot more power. Uh, so, I mean, yeah, I think the reason I had it down and okay was I was never like those things always felt a little gutless to me.
yeah.
And they didn't make the best noise at high RPM,
Oh no, it's awful. It's
you know,
buzzy.
and that's with a
Um,
resonance tube, I think, on the firewall, if memory serves. I could be confusing that with a
I
different
don't
car,
know.
but yeah, they
It
just
it had it had this chirp, like this. I think it's got something to do with like the fuel system, but there's like this chirp sound, and it's really annoying.
yeah. So I mean,
It's not a good sound to hear from an engine.
so as an alternative to say getting a Miata, it's great as for me, but it was just one of those things where it's like in one hand, it's like, hey, this thing has a load. It has loads of potential, right? Because you know me, I'm the guy who can't leave his car alone at all. If you look at any of these cars here, with the exception of the BMW, and that's only because I never got the chance to, they're all modified in some way, shape, or form, and that's just part of the car culture I personally enjoy quite a bit. But yeah, it was just I don't know, man. The novelty of them wore off really quick on me, and it was more of a
Yeah,
personal choice than it was, you know,
sure.
I guess oh, Hanson loves it, it's trash. It wasn't that, you know what I mean? So, but I think I know that I mean you probably have one of these cars in good, but I know the other one is not. So the floor is yours.
Yeah. So the I there you go. No, absolutely not. That's going all the way to the top. The best things we've ever owned, the Hyundai Veloster N. It is um, one of the best cars I've ever purchased. It is so much fun to drive. The sound is just so crazy. The handling is great. It feels pretty raw. You know, it's not as raw as like the Mitsubishi Evo 9 that I had, but this car reminds me a lot of that. The manual gearbox is crisp, um, but that exhaust sound, it's the best. I mean, Hyundai. So Hyundai out of nowhere employs Albert Bierman. He's like the head of the M division from BMW. He used to lead that up, and then he was hired by Hyundai to kind of make the N division, kind of like their own take on the M. And this was the first N car, and you know it was making a pretty big statement, and they had like all of these um, like these exhaust, not exhaust technologies, but it's like, you know, anti-lag. Well, this car has a version of that. So anti-lag is
For the
when
MPGs, right?
they yeah, exactly. Anti-lag is when they alter the timing slightly so that combustion occurs partially outside of the cylinder, so that can accelerate the exhaust gases more, so that it spins the turbo more, so it preserves that boost, so that when you're changing gears, you have that power reserve, basically. And the byproduct of that is glorious sound out the exhaust, and it sounds like gunfire, and it also has like all the snap, crackle, and pop anytime you lift off the throttle. And I mean, this car has it from the factory. So, you know, at the time when I was buying this, I also shopped it against the Honda Civic Type R, and the Civic Type R was more expensive. It looked more ridiculous than the Veloster N, but
Ugly.
it didn't sound as good. It didn't sound as good as the Veloster N, and the sound just, you know, sold me on it. But I still have it. It's still one of the best things I've ever owned. So I think it deserves the top spot over there.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean it's a hell of a car. You know, that's one of those ones where it's like beauty in the eye of the beholder, type of a thing, and so on and so forth. I get what it is. I respect the engineering. I love the fact that you found a car that brings the passion out. Right?
yeah,
It's just one of those things that was
absolutely.
never really. I don't know. Like I think the biggest reason is that if you look at my stuff, and where I'm going, and we talk every day about cars we build, all this other sort of stuff. I think I'm over front wheel drive, and that's kind of it.
You are.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, I I got to it a little bit, but I just love the control you can have with rear wheel drive, um,
Hmm.
and obviously it takes a little bit more. We'll just say maturity, and we are talking about a Mustang owner, so got to be careful. But I like the idea. It's just all the rear wheel drive cars I've driven that we've owned or we've had the privilege of testing that were performance variants and things like that. It's just leaving the front wheels to do the steering and or braking and not having to worry
Yeah.
about
It's a lot
acceleration.
of work.
It just
Yeah.
they feel lighter and on their toes a little bit more of like, you know, when you're getting in a ready position, right, for a sport, you know, you're defending on basketball, it just feels like you're more on your toes ready to react as opposed to being a little more
Hmm.
flat-footed, I guess is the best way for the front wheel drive biased type vehicles and stuff. But it is by no
Hmm.
means a detractor from the engineering of that car, the capability of that car, and the fact that it's, to me, you put that in front of me or the Type R, I'm taking that 10 out of 10 times because the first Type R or the most recent Type R was ugly as sin. Thankfully, they made it look better in camouflage for the newer one. But the one that's out
Yeah.
now is just, it's hideous. It just looks so bad. It's one of those things where you
Yeah.
look at it and you go, in 10 years, that will not age well, personally.
That's not going to age well. No.
So,
Although, you know, yeah, I don't know. I do remember looking at like I think they had the Mugen Civic Type R,
they
or
always do.
Civic Si Mugen Special Edition. This was, I think Honda sold it, and it looked crazy, but then like I saw, I think a couple of months ago, it was like super expensive on Bring a Trailer, but
Yeah, well,
whatever. I got a feeling this Civic Type R, it looks kind of crazy, but it is the first Civic Type R available to the States. So I think there's going to be some, classicness to it
yeah, well, it
that,
was a hype machine. You remember, oh my gosh, the Type R is coming, just like when we got the GTR, right? Right,
yeah.
everyone's like, the GTR is coming. I only know this from Gran
Mhm.
Turismo. This is amazing. This is a great day to be an American motorist and things like that. So like, I get that of it. Just someone else can have it. That's not really some. It's I would
Yeah,
rather literally any car on this list, and even the ones that were crap, over a Type R, just
yeah.
because I just don't want to be looking at it, seeing in it. It's an amazing piece of engineering. Sorry.
Mhm.
So
As for the other positions that you have there, I would have to agree with you on the Aston Martin being, all the way at the very top. I do remember flying down with you to again Tavares's house, and we picked up his old Aston Martin, and man, that was such an experience driving that back up. I mean, the sound of that thing is just so glorious, and V8 power. I mean, you just can't beat that, and also the manual transmission.
everything,
So
just everything about it, man. It sounds great, looks great. It's one of those things where, like, I don't know how to equate this, but like, there's a feeling you get behind the wheel of a car that a capability wise what you can or can't do, right, or what it can and can't do, and that kind of gives you confidence to drive and have a good time with it and stuff. And then there's cars that going 10 under the speed limit still make you feel like a hero, and that was the
oh,
Aston
absolutely.
Martin. It's a
Yeah.
just the cachet of that brand, even if the mirrors are off an XC90. The center console and infotainment system is straight out of my C30, just with a different color graphics and things like that. None of that
Yeah.
matters. Like, it was just inside, looking at it, sitting in it, driving it, parking it. Everything about it just made you feel like $1 million. It was such an amazing car to have.
Absolutely. No, yeah, just yeah, the driving experience was so unique. And yeah, it just looks so good, you
Oh,
know. And if you look
perfection.
at the Aston Martins now, I mean, they're all still beautiful, but not to the same extent to like looking at these cars when they were first sold,
Oh,
like transport yourself back to 2007, 2008 and like looking at that, you're like, holy cow, there's nothing like it on the street.
it's just
So,
beautiful in its detail, but beautiful in its simplicity. And I think the new ones are just traveling down that road of just being over designed a little bit.
yeah.
They're still very good looking
Yeah.
cars, but there's an element of, if you had stopped just before you put that in, you'd have been great. Obviously, you can't have the same shape for 20, 30 years and expect to
Yeah,
sell when,
of course.
Porsche. Well, I guess maybe if you followed the Porsche plan and just mildly updated the
Yeah,
styling a little bit here and there. But
yeah.
I love that thing. I want another one very badly. And then,
And of course that Magicama V70R is up there. I mean, Greg was able to create a lot more content with that one, so it definitely was very special for us. And the fact that he was able to push out so many horsepower out of it, and it sounded great. I mean, it was just a lovely, lovely car.
it was a sleeper. It looked great. It sounded amazing, like you said. Nobody expected it. I think I said last night, like, it was one of those things where you knew people who heard the exhaust note and then saw you drive by, not realizing it was you, and then the light bulb hit, and the expression on their faces was
Exactly.
a memory you needed to have. And with all of that, this this series, even though this was the second one, this built shifting lane. Like we talked about on the first video we ever had. This helped build shifting lanes. I don't know where shifting
Hmm.
lanes is today without this car. None of these other cars up here made a huge impact on the channel and us
Yeah.
as a whole. Like they just didn't. Even the Aston, you know, as much as I love the Mustang and you love the Veloster, they just didn't have a big impact. That had a
Hmm.
massive impact.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. If you look at the view counts, if you go to our YouTube channel right now and just like look at the view counts for like the project cars, I mean, I don't think it comes any of the project cars. If you total it up, it doesn't come close to the V70R. It's just night and day difference.
Absolutely.
Um, but yeah, the V60 Polestar, I'm really looking forward to seeing where that how that does for the Shifting Lanes 2 YouTube channel. So if you guys are on, and yeah, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for both Shifting Lanes 1 and Shifting Lanes 2. But I'm really looking forward to the content that Gregson's going to be making
Yeah, that's
on that car.
it's a fun modern car riding on 20s, which is crazy. Also crazy transverse straight six. Crazy.
Yeah, that seems ridiculous, but I mean, I understand Volvo had, it was all about like safety and increasing the crumple zones and everything, but I mean, that's just like everyone's done inline sixes and they've always sent the power to the back. Why not just do the same thing? But Volvo's got a Volvo.
No, yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
and then the Mustang. I mean, uh, I'm gonna I'm gonna let you speak about that because I'd probably put that down all the way down to the worst cars, but I haven't gotten a chance to drive it, by the way, just so you know. But I'm pretty sure that's been one of the best cars you've ever owned, right, Chad?
Without question, and that's simply down to the fact that it is the potential of that car is incredible. 700 horsepower at the wheels without touching the internals. The suspension upgrades, the aftermarket support, the factory support you get. You can put bolt up GT350 stuff right to it. And like I said
Right.
before, like what I look at a car, I don't look at what it is as it sits. It's a failing. I get it, but it's just one of those things where I love the look of it. I love the way the way it sounds, man. And the fact that it goes to 7,500 RPM, which I think makes it the highest revving vehicle we own. Which is
Yeah,
crazy to think
that's
in the
crazy.
American muscle car.
With V8. Yeah.
you know, the big ass brakes, everything about it, man. It's incredible, and the fact that I'm being able to do some big things with it is huge,
Yeah.
hugely appealing.
Now I haven't driven yours, but yeah, I have driven a bunch of Mustang GTs in general. Also was lucky enough to drive a 350 Shelby GT 350. I think you were there too, around Pocono Raceway.
Yes, sir.
Um, that one, had the flat plane crank going all the way up to 8,250 RPMs, I believe. And then last year, I was able to drive the GT 500, which was back to a cross plane crank. Um, but yeah, that was a crazy car. I mean, wasn't able to kind of like let it loose on the. I think I was in NJMP, so New Jersey Motorsports Park, driving around Lightning, I think, but wasn't able to kind of like fully unleash the beast, I guess, just because we were in like a lead follow kind of like a lap.
Oh, jeez.
So the person in front of me was like really slow, so we had
Yeah.
to kind of like,
Similar thing happened when we
yeah,
drove the Corvettes. You had someone like, if
yeah,
you want a Sunday cruise, go on the road drive. If you want to drive
yeah,
fast, do that. And then there's always somebody. I know it sounds crazy that we're complaining about driving Corvettes and Mustangs on a racetrack and finding things to
yeah,
complain about, but some people it's just imagine being on a racetrack with the car you want to drive on a track more than anything else, and people insisting on driving 60, 70 miles an hour on a straight that you should be doing
right,
50% more on. that even people like us can do pretty safely. It's really it's one of the bigger annoyances that we have the privilege to experience. But
Yeah.
I mean, the Coyote, you mentioned it, the Voodoo, the Predator, they're all based on the same basic layout as the Coyote with different. I mean, the heads are CNC ported from factory, and stuff like that. You have the 5.2 liters is from removing the sleeve and putting a different spray, almost a spray-in liner to get that displacement because the bore is pretty much maxed. It's just perfectly designed, perfectly built. It's one of the best American engines built in the last 20 years, bar none, and I'm not going to hear otherwise on that one. And like I said, it's another vehicle that affords me a ton of opportunities to do things I've always dreamed about. And again, it's from the driving feel, it feels a lot like the Aston on the inside, that low slung 2-door sports car that makes a hellacious V8 noise. But yeah, I mean, I understand it's probably not that, and we definitely got to get you behind the wheel. And it's because it's an experience. It's a full body experience with that car. So,
Of course, with the exhaust and everything. And I have to revert back to the exhaust because, like, driving is all about the senses, right? It's like obviously you're seeing like how beautiful the cars are, but you're also like feeling all like the rumbles, and you're hearing the exhaust. And hopefully you're not smelling weird things when you're driving, but it's everything that you feel when you're experiencing these cars. The more it can affect you, the more significant that driving experience is.
absolutely. And that's really the main reason the C30 is down here. It's quiet by retrospect. It's I don't know what the word is, but again, it has that feeling of being a little safe. The exhaust is very quiet, even being a 3-inch turboback. It's the Mustang just hits more emotionally, more of the senses, and that's why it's above it for me and anything. But I don't know. I figured this would be fun. I figure this would be a fun thing we can do going forward. So if you have YouTubers out there that you like, send us over. Send us some of their builds, and we'll kind of do something similar. So I think that's going to be it for us. I apologize. It's a little bit of a shorter stream. We'll definitely be on next time for our usual, hopefully, couple hours and things like that. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you next time.
See ya.